All right. Here we go. Today, we're going with episode 4, huh?
Episode 4, Dino. That's right. We're on our way.
Episode 4, man. On the way, man. And this episode here, our topic is going to be the Know Better, Do Better Dad. Yeah. Know Better, Do Better Dad. As I sat and I've been thinking over the last few weeks with us doing the podcast now, I just think about a lot of dad things, dad things of, my dad, my granddad, and, what I come to find out really is a lot of things that we do today is because of what was done in the past. How we may act, how we may go about some relationships and things. And one of the things that I used to be so resentful about from my dad's perspective was when I got older and got married, for the first time, it was more so like I didn't know and understand what the, being romantic and, the I love yous and the, holding the hands and, being the lovey-dovey. That's just not, how I came up, from, I didn't get those type things from my dad. And it wasn't until being grown as when, I started saying, I love you to my dad. And it was kind of tough. I can see the first few times, with me saying it, it was kind of, it took him back, kind of like, okay, where'd that come from? But what I started thinking, I started feeling kind of bitter for quite a long time, man. I was feeling bitter because, like I say, with the relationships, I was, my wife then was, saying about, didn't know, have a lot of, romantic, ways about myself, and which I really, I couldn't explain it until I started really thinking. I said, you know what? As growing up, I never saw my granddad, finessing and hugging and kissing on my grandmother. I was saying play with her and all, but I never saw that. I never heard, that I love yous, as openly. And I thought about it. I say, well, I never got that from my dad either. I didn't hear my dad, never really tell me, he loved me. That wasn't something. Now, my mom, it was one thing, but my dad, I didn't get that. So I was like, I was feeling resentful, like, man, why this dude don't, never share that? Why he don't, share the love thing? Why didn't I see him, romanticizing with my mom and holding hands and kissing and slapping on the butt or something, around the house? That's not what I saw, And as I started getting older, I started, like I said, being kind of resentful about that. I started getting, kind of being upset when I would think about those things, especially when it came up in my relationship.
Yep.
I didn't really have an excuse. Right. I just could think, I really don't know why I don't know how to be romantic or, say I love you so openly and all.
Yeah.
But then I started looking deeper, man, and realized my dad's dad didn't give him that.
Right.
He didn't give him the I love you. He didn't see, his mom being romanticized and, hugged on and kissed on around the house. So my thing was getting to the point of knowing that I have girls and a son, as they were getting older, I said, we got to change this narrative, man. We got to change this narrative. I know what it's supposed to be.
Right.
I know what it's supposed to be now. And I want my kids to see me, kissing my wife every time we leave each other's presence. We give each other a kiss. When we come into each other's presence, we give each other a kiss. And it's always before we leave each other, it's always I love you. And that transpired as well as with the kids. It's always I love you at the end of the conversation. It's always, a hug or embracing before we dismiss from each other's presence.
That's right.
So those things I say, when we know better, we should do better. And that's been a big thing with me, just knowing better now because it wasn't being done then. And I do have control of making those things happen. So I want to be that dad and continue to, share with other dads that we, when we know better, we do better. When we know better, we should do better.
Man, the point that I picked up on that was about the change of the narrative, which I think it's almost like that's the overall message around this podcast is changing the narrative on things. Like if you think about scripting versus unscripting, Scripting is about creating a narrative, right? And, and I think about this right now. So many of the things we've been talking about in the last few episodes and all the future episodes is really just about, it's not even just about opening the discussion. It's about like changing the discussion and just changing that narrative around so many different topics. Desensitizing some topics, change the narrative of, men are healers too. Men are compassionate too. Men are emotional too. Men are all these things that they do it in a different way, you know? And so when you were talking about that, I actually was thinking in my head, I said, you know what? I don't know the whole background of what you're just talking about because it sounds like that's something that you've been pondering for a while, so I certainly don't want to contest all of it. But there was a quote that I read just this morning from one of my favorite authors, Don Miller. He quoted it, and he couldn't remember where he read it from. So it's like a quote of a quote, and I've been trying to track this down. But basically it said, our children learn to self-soothe from their mother and learn their self-esteem from their dad, which makes a lot of sense, because by nature, women are more nurturing.
Yes.
It is by nature, and so I wonder if perhaps you got that self-esteem / confidence from your dad or granddad, but I bet you were already probably more romantic than you probably gave yourself credit for. Like you're beating yourself up because it's not cognizant, it's not the thing that maybe comes to you naturally, I guess is the point. But I bet you actually were just romantic in your own way, which you probably picked up just from watching your mother.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it wasn't in the forefront. What was in the forefront was that self-esteem and that confidence that you carry around with you. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But you're just now cognizant of sort of like the fact that like the idea of being romantic wasn't the thing that kind of came to you naturally to say, I'm going to do this. Right? Like if you think about like the the 5 love languages?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So my love languages, my main one is words of affirmation and acts of service. Like those are my 2 there, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you think about in either of those instances, that's basically what it's talking about is being romantic, right? I mean, romance isn't just all about sexual romance, obviously,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
It could just be the little things like the little I love yous, all that kind of stuff, right? And so, whatever you're like, do you know what's your love language?
Yeah, mine is actually, like I say, more so the words of acts of affirmation.
Words of affirmation. Yeah. And so I bet you probably over time have done made those little words. Maybe they were text messages or maybe they were verbal, right? Because that's the thing with the words of affirmation. It's not always a verbal word.
Exactly.
It could be in a written way somehow, Anyways, I guess my point was, I think part of the narrative around all of this is that I feel like we beat ourselves up way too much.
Yeah.
Like we just, I just think with everything, we need to give ourselves grace with a lot of things. I mean, there is merit perhaps to, you were saying, your paternal influences did not make it obvious to be romantic, to be affectionate, right? I believe that's true, I guess is my point. But I don't think it means that you have not been romantic only up until the point that you are aware of it.
Yeah,
you know
just
what I mean?
being aware of it.
I bet you the whole time you were romantic in your own way.
Yes.
Just you're beating yourself up for it. And again, I don't know the whole, but I've just known that for myself.
But
I used to say the same thing about myself all the time. Like, I don't think really I'm a romantic person. But I look back on the years and I'm kind of like, actually, you know what? There's actually several times I did things out of my way,
intentionally, and did it
intentionally.
Did it with intent to be romantic.
That's right.
But like I said, not realizing it. And again, that's what this whole topic was all about. Knowing better and doing better. Like you said, once we become aware, and again, we beat ourselves up a lot, man. And it's been happening for years. And as we talk about these things and we discuss certain, topics, we realize we do put a lot more weight on ourselves than we should be carrying. And again, that's a choice at the end of the day. It's a choice. So we have to be, again, reminding ourselves, paying attention to ourselves that, look, back up off yourself. You don't have to, be so hard on yourself. Just because you didn't know this, that's okay. That's all right that you didn't know. But at the same time, just being mindful of, I want to be better.
Now you know. Now you do.
Now you do.
That's it.
That's it.
Now
That's
you
real.
now that you know better, then now you do better. I get it. It makes total sense.
Yeah.
I think even going back to, well, I guess it was a previous episode around emotional responsibility. Because one thing I was thinking about this is that about the beating yourself up and everything. Really, the only thing we should feel guilty for is our actual behaviors.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you feel like, hey, like I should be more romantic or I should be more this, and it's like perhaps you should, but if you aren't, it's like it's okay. That just doesn't come naturally to you. You know what I mean? It's like for instance, like I should eat better. Yeah, of course I should eat better, but like, am I eating? So it's like I can't beat myself up because I don't eat good every single day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? However, if I'm in a position to eat better and I don't, then the behavior is what I can sort of beat myself up on.
Exactly. It's that choice.
It's the choice, And so for those that feel like whether it's a romance issue or just any issue basically that you have, you can't beat yourself up for either not knowing or thinking. All you can really hold yourself accountable for is what you do from this point on.
Yeah, because what you don't know, you don't know. And like I said, once you realize and you recognize, okay, I understand it'll, the relationship gets better if I did this. I would get better if I did this. So again, just taking initiative to do the things that need to be done to be better and get better. So that's what I think, where I was coming from with this topic. But like you said, for years, just beating, like I say, not physically beating my dad up, but mentally kind of beating him up. But again, he just don't know. And sometimes you just play out the things and do the things because of what, you've seen, for so long. And that goes back to a story that I was saying. I seen a young man, he was basically, he was cooking, and his family, he had a family of cooks, and he had actually ended up getting married. And his wife was asking him, why are you throwing half of the turkey away? And he was like, well, I seen my grandmother do it.
Yeah.
And he goes back and asks, Grandma, why do you throw half of the turkey away during Thanksgiving when it's time to, cook?
Yeah.
She said, I seen my grandmother and my great grandmother. But then when they got down to the core of it, to understand, they asked that last living grandmother, why is it that you throw half of the turkey away when you are cooking, Thanksgiving? She said, well, back in our days, we had small pots where a turkey wouldn't fit inside the pot. So I had to throw half of it away in order to be able to get the turkey inside the pot. But you bring it forward now. They've been doing these things over and over just because that's what had been happening, but they didn't realize why they was doing these things. They was just doing it just because of the fact it had been done before, through repetition, through generations. And realizing now we got pots that hold 2 and 3 turkeys now, that we can,
generational routine, that's what that is. It's a generational routine. I think I just coined a psychological behavior. I'm going to Google this later and see if anybody else has talked about generational routines.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Generational routines.
I feel like
I got my pen on to write that down.
That's what's that?
I said the entire military is built off of that.
Right, but I
Routines.
don't think people have sort of like identified it as a man. People love labels on everything today. I don't think anybody's. I've never heard of it, but maybe someone's already talked about it, but in a more defined word. I don't know, but that just struck me. This is interesting because there are a lot of just generational routines that we do, and that's one of them.
Exactly.
So
again, when we know better, we should be doing better.
That's right.
That's just point blank. No excuses.
That's it. Well, you heard it first. Break the generational routine Well, maybe there are some routines that are should be kept, but otherwise, now knowing's half the battle. Know better, do better. That'll wrap it up for episode 4. Thanks for the topic, Dino. That was a good topic.
Not a problem, man.